How's everybody doing? Good. We're really impressed with your involvement here. We're going to talk a little bit about this exercise you just did. Anyways, for those who don't know me, my name's Tony Lackey. Hi, how are you? I just did a session before this. I'm Director of Risk and Insurance for the university. As I said in the previous session, my role is basically to make sure you guys don't do anything bad to yourselves while you're traveling. But in the big picture, it's actually two things. One is I identify the risks that the students and the university faces as a whole, and try to make sure we're aware of them and what we're going to do to mitigate them. I look at a lot of stuff. One of the university's biggest risks, quite honestly, is you guys traveling abroad, because we don't have a lot of control over of what happens once you leave, this campus, right? So it's a big challenge for us. So what we're going to talk today about is risk. You guys actually just did a risk assessment, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the framework around what you need to do for your personal risk assessment. I'm going to talk a little bit about travel and country risks, your personal safety risks, accommodation, legal, and reputation, insurance, and Holly and Sarah, I can't remember if you guys need me to talk about waivers at all. I know. Okay, good. Okay, great. The other thing, and more importantly, I want to talk a lot about is a new service that the university's purchased called International SOS. It's really going to be one of your major supports when you travel abroad, and we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. So, what's risk? It's any event or activity that can have a negative impact on your trip. So I'm looking around at the pages, and I'm seeing a lot of. It's a little echoey. A little louder? Can everybody hear me at the back? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So really, it's anything that's going to affect your trip, right? And you've done a lot of great work identifying a lot of those issues that you're concerned about. And so the next slide, I normally would say, well, what are some of the risks? But you've already done that, right? So some of the things I worry about is, again, there's a risk around travel, and what could happen? Could I end up with stuck in London for a week because the only plane I'm taking to the other country only flies once a week? Or personal safety, and we can talk about that in a few minutes. Accommodation, reputation, and of course the legal risk. The thing about risk is there's always a relationship between risk and reward. So the higher level of risk we take, the more reward we should be getting from it, right? Or we shouldn't be taking that risk. So you don't want to take a lot of risk if you're not really benefited from it. The fact that you're traveling abroad is a risk in itself, but the reward is definitely worth taking that risk, right? Otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. So to sort of identify and prepare yourself when you're traveling and while you're abroad, you need to actually conduct a risk management assessment. And basically that's what you guys just did through this exercise. You sat down, you identified the risks that you think that may affect you. You sort of assess them or evaluate them to see which ones are more important. And then finally what you did is develop some action plans on how we're going to eliminate or mitigate those. So what you really need to do as individuals now, as you've heard from the larger group, is sit down and take the time to develop your own risk mitigation plan while you're traveling. How are you going to deal with a lot of the risks you guys identified from a personal perspective? Are the mitigation measures that you guys identified something that you can implement, okay? The rest of this presentation is really going to talk about some of the things you need to do to sort of mitigate your risks. So, before you go, attend a pre-departure orientation. So, glad to see, I think Holly said there's only 3 out of the whole group that didn't show up today. It's really positive, because you get a lot of really good information today about things you need to be concerned about when you travel. Research your host country prior to departure. From a positive perspective, you want to know everything you can about the country you're going to. What do I want to see? Where do I want to go? You have weekends off from your job. You want to really experience the country, its geography, its culture, all that kind of stuff. Understand that. But more also, you want to understand, where shouldn't I go, right? What shouldn't I do? So understand the country. Photocopy all your important documents. Photocopy your passport, your birth certificate. Leave a copy here with somebody that you can contact. take a copy with you, but keep it separate from your original document. If you lose your passport, it's always easier to get it reinstated or get a replacement if you have the document number and that kind of documentation. All Canadians, you must register with Global Affairs Canada. So go to travel.gc.ca and they have a place where you can register. The reason why is the Canadian government needs to know where you are if you want them to help you. So if it's a natural disaster and they want to evacuate Canadians from an area, the only way they'll know where you are is if you register through travel.gc.ca. Carleton has a travel registry. It's on Carleton Central. We would like to know where you are in case something bad happens so we can reach out to you. Again, we really want you to do that. Again, it's just letting us know where you are so that we can track down if something that happens. And also, we really want you to register for this new service we purchased, International SOS. I'm going to talk a whole lot about it at the end of the presentation. But again, it's another registration. So there's actually 3 places to register. We'd like to amalgamate them so you only have to do it once, but the reality of it is we don't have the technology to do that yet. And lastly, download the International SOS app, and I'll talk more about the app at the end of the presentation. Before you go, any communication from Carleton will come through your Carleton email, so just continue to check your Carleton email while you're away. It's really important that you stay connected, both from academic and from information we want to send your perspective. So when you travel, I always take the view that any country is like Canada. There's places in Canada, places in Ottawa that I wouldn't go, and other places where I travel, there's places I wouldn't go either. I went to Mexico this winter, and I went to Playa del Carmen, and the week before I left for Playa del Carmen, 6 people got murdered. So my wife, who's a bit risk adverse, sort of said, well, do you think we should still go? And I said, you mean we could not go and ruin a lovely vacation by the beach and everything, or we could go and do some research and find out where the incident happened. Well, it happened in the slum areas. There's no way in the world we were going to go to that area. So again, had a lovely vacation, visit this whole city of Playa del Carmen, but did not go to the area where that incident happened. Again, did a risk assessment, identified what the risk could be, made an assessment, and we took actions to mitigate it. So always be aware of the areas of the city and the country you want to travel to, and those areas that you probably shouldn't travel to. Okay, and it goes back to you need to do the research on your country, and it goes back to looking at travel.gc.ca for travel reports. International SOS, if you register and you register in my trips, we'll actually send you a personalized risk assessment of the country and the areas you're going to. So again, I'll talk to you about how you can do that later on. The U.S. State Department has a fairly good site. The only thing you always have to worry about government sites is there is political influence on them. So if the relationships between a certain country and Canada may not be that great, the tendency is for government global affairs to sort of put a lower level of safety on those countries, or a lower level on them. When you arrive, make sure you ask questions. In this case, you're going to have an employer. Ask your employer. Get to know the people you're working with. They'll tell you where to go and not to go, right? And always get to know locals. I really enjoy meeting locals. I've got some friends now when I travel to Mexico that I met the first time 20 years ago when I traveled to Mexico, and they're great. If I have any problems in arranging my trip, they actually help me out all the time. We get together when I'm down there, so it's really really important to really benefit from the experience. You want to get to know some of the people and know the culture. So there's 3 areas that I want to look at when talking about your personal safety when you travel. Obviously your health, security is a big one, and then financial. As far as health goes, really encourage you to get a pre-departure checkup from your doctor, just in case there's something is wrong. You don't want to get overseas and have something serious and you're going to have to come home. So you should make sure you get all that work done before you go. The other thing is, if you are on medication, it's really a good idea to get enough medication for your trip. So if you're going for 3 months, get your prescription filled for 3 months, and that can be done when you visit your doctor. Also, your doctor, if you're going to somewhere where you need vaccinations, your doctor can generally tell you where to go to get those. The drugstore on campus, the pharmacist there actually can do a international assessment on you and see what vaccinations you need and can arrange for you to get them. Medical services abroad, another service International SOS can provide. They can actually let you know where the best doctors and that are in the country in relation to the condition you may have. Again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. So security, be discreet. Staying away from uncontrolled crowds and protests and riots and all that is really important. We had some students in Israel a few years ago, well, I guess it was last year, who were in Israel during the time the U.S. Decided to open their embassy in Jerusalem. The students, there was generally a lot of political science students. They wanted to go down and see the opening of the embassy. We advised them against it, mainly because there was going to be a lot of protests. A lot of people got arrested. Luckily, through the International SOS app, we were able to tell that none of the students went down to the area. But the thing you've always got to remember about police is they don't care who you are. If you're in a crowd of people causing a disturbance, they're going to round you up and throw you in jail. And depending on where you're going, getting out of jail can be a real challenge. So it's not like in Canada where you can go in, you post bail, and you get out in a day or two. You could be in jail for months. So really strongly, you stay away from uncontrolled crowds. Never walk alone. I heard in one of the exercises somebody said that. Walk with a buddy or in groups. Try not to go out at night in dangerous areas, but if you must, always go with a buddy. One trick I always use about my valuables is I actually always carry 2 wallets. I have a dummy wallet with some old credit cards in it, old ID, and some currency. I put it in an obvious spot, and I always hide my wallet in another location, and it's actually worked for me. I've been pickpocketed once while I was traveling. They got a few bucks and some old credit cards. I had all my money in my credit card, so it worked out well. And also check the country website where you're going to see when you have to produce your passport. Your passport is golden. You want to make sure that you have it with you at all times. You don't want to lose it. You might be able to get out of the country that you're in without a passport, but you won't get accepted into Canada without your passport. So make sure you know when you give it. And that's one of the things that in some countries, the police will always want your passport. They may ask for some ransom to get your passport back. So understand when you have to give it up legally. Personal safety, I guess overall, our approach and what we'd like you to realize is that your life is a lot more important than any of your belongings. So if somebody is there to hold you up or mug you, give them your belongings. You can always replace belongings, but you know your life is precious, so always understand that. It won't do you any good to struggle. You're better off just giving them your wallet or whatever. And I guess as an overall sort of my perception of people in life, and I spent 25 years in insurance and insurance investigation. And when I did research about insurance claims, what I always found amazing was people always said to me, I didn't feel right in that situation, and I wish I would have left. And it really made me realize that as human beings we have a really good way of understanding danger and situations that we don't comfortable in. So trust your own intuition. If you don't feel a situation is safe, react to that, right? And so maybe if you're not feeling comfortable, leave the area of the city and all that kind of stuff. Especially if somebody's looking to rob you or something, they're generally going to scout you out for a while. So you can generally feel that, I find. Accommodations. Again, we sometimes let our guard down. We think in our hotel room, or we're in our hotel and we think we're safe. Quite honestly, hotels are a very good place for pickpockets to hang out. People are generally not as focused. If you're staying in a hotel, you're thinking you're somewhat on vacation, so you think you're safe. But pickpockets happen there all the time. And it's just not in third world countries or in Europe. It actually happens in Canada. Personal experience, I was down in Toronto at a conference. My wife was out for breakfast one morning at a hotel, and I won't say the hotel, but she was sitting there and she actually left her purse on the side of the chair, and a guy just came up and grabbed the purse and was out the door with it. The crazy thing about that situation was my wife actually ran after him and caught him and got her purse back, but if that was me, I would have been saying, let him take your purse. So, I think most of you guys, some of you guys may be living in apartments. The point here I want to make is that you may have to sign a lease, and it could be in a foreign language, and you may say, well, I'm just going to sign it. Try to get it translated, or at least get it explained to you in detail, because the tenancy laws in countries change. In Ontario, tenants have some really good rights. But in some countries, you could be thrown out of your apartment in a minute's notice, right? So you want to understand that and make sure that you understand your legal rights under the landlord and tenants laws. Okay, and this, I did this presentation this morning with the exchange students, but work with your employer. I'm sure they can help you understand, the legal requirements around housing and where's a good place to live and that kind of stuff. Reputation. How many people are here to get a diploma? Raise your hands. Anybody not put up their hand? Right? Really, that's why you come to Carleton University. You're coming to get that nice little piece of paper at the end of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years, however you're staying. And that piece of paper is only as good as our reputation is, right? So from a personal perspective, our reputation as an institution really comes back to you, because you as our students are really our representatives when you go abroad, and really establish what other partners that we work with think of our institution, and you as an individual if you go apply for a job in another country when you graduate. The other side of that is a lot of the partners that we were working with, we've established because of the people that have gone before you and the work that Holly and Sarah have done to develop a lot of these partnerships, and yourselves actually, will be enhanced by the way you react, the hard work you put in your internships, and the way you present yourself. So what we're really asking you to do is really be good representatives of Carleton University when you travel the city of Ottawa and Canada, and represent the university well. Second note is, how many people know about Carleton's Students' Rights and Responsibilities policy? If you know about it, raise your hand. I'm seeing a few people. That's better than most. So Carleton does have this policy. It's really our code of conduct, and it's really, I'm saying really a lot, it's our expectation of you as students when you're here or when you're on Carleton, or participating in a Carleton activity. So it really states what we want you, how we want you to act. And if you don't act appropriately, it actually has penalties on it. So one thing it's important that we inform you is you are representing Carleton when you're going on your internship, and so that student rights and responsibility policy does apply. So I'll give you an example of what can happen. A few years ago, we had an exchange student go abroad, and he went out one night and got really, really hammered, and the police brought him back to university, and the university actually expelled him the next day and sent him home. And people say, well, if he only got drunk one night, what's the big deal? Well, the expectation was that you didn't drink to excess in that culture, and so that was a real embarrassment for the host university, and so their action was, we don't want the student around. So that kind of behavior, you must understand what the expectations are in the country you're going to, but also now with your employer, and act accordingly. And then we come to alcohol and drugs, right? So beer plus fun equals life, right? In Canada, we tend to have that approach. We're a little bit, I think we're one of the largest beer consuming nations in the world. Now we're dealing with cannabis. We've legalized cannabis. So, generally the way we treat cannabis and alcohol in Canada now is that it's a recreational drug. Everybody should have a right to do it. In some cultures, that's not acceptable, and the laws are quite severe. So there's different cultures. You need to be aware of how the culture you're going to deals with alcohol. Some cultures allow you to drink to excess, but the expectations are you don't show any signs of intoxication. Other ones are alcohol is not accepted. When it comes to drugs, the laws can be quite severe in a lot of countries, and so my advice to you is just don't do drugs while you're away. Enjoy the life, but when you get into drugs, the drug laws can be quite severe in other countries. And the thing you always got to remember is the law of the land applies. So even though you might think that we're really good people, global affairs can come in and help you, the reality of it is all they can do is make sure you get proper legal representation, and that the people that are dealing with you are following the laws of that country. They really can't come in and just swoop you out. So it's very important that you understand that, and quite honestly, I just emphasize, it's just not worth it doing drugs while you're away. So last sort of area I want to talk about is financial. As far as budget, just from personal experience and my trip recently to Mexico, and I just got my credit card. Well, actually, it was my trip to Florida, actually. Just got my credit card account, and I definitely went over budget. And my experience over traveling to a lot of different places over 20 years is that you always need more money than you think you need. So one of the things I always says is always prepare to have a slush fund that you can turn to, or make sure you have access to your parents' credit card. Okay, I got a few laughs there. And so the next major area I want to talk to is just insurance, general, but more in particularly travel insurance. General conception, and after spending 25 years in the insurance industry, we used to hear this a lot, but I had insurance. Well, why don't you cover it? Insurance should always be a last resort. Insurance doesn't pay for that sentimental value you may have in your, the watch that your parents gave you for your graduating high school or other stuff. It doesn't cover for your research that might be on your laptop that you've used for your first 2 months when you traveled, or you're doing at the job placement. So just understand that insurance it will reimburse you money, but it can't protect all those other intangible items that you may be faced with your property. But saying that, it is a must, and you must have, if you're traveling abroad, you need to have travel insurance. So as far as property, well, 3 types I'm going to talk about: property, general liability, and travel insurance. And when we talk about liability, it's a little different because you guys are going to be in a work placement. But for property insurance, typically if you're under the age of 25, your parents' homeowners or tenants insurance will cover your property while you travel around the world. Generally, there's a limit of some type, maybe $25,000 or $50,000 or $100,000, but it generally will cover you while it's away from that home premises. And if it doesn't already, because some insurers will exclude you when you go away to university, it's generally a lot cheaper just to add it. And that's if you're going to take some expensive property, you probably should look at your homeowners because the limits on travel insurance can be quite small. And when I talk about limits, things they tend to put limits on are things like jewelry, computers, and generally it can range from $500 to $2,000. But when you're talking about any policy, you always need to watch the limits of your policy and your exclusions. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But as a big bold comment is, if you can't afford to lose it, don't take it with you. So if you have the $5,000 Mac that you have all the bells and whistles on, it may not be the computer you want to take. You may want to take your old PC so that you can, you've lost it. It's not as big a loss to you. As far as liability goes, the basic liability coverage you have, and this covers you in the event that you were to cause injury to another person or injury to somebody else's property. The university's liability policy does cover you while you're acting in the course of your activities as a student. However, a lot of you guys, well, all you guys are going to be working. So the liability insurance that will protect you as far as your activities with your employer should come from the employer. So one of the questions you may want to ask them is, sorry about that. So one of the things you should ask your employer is, if something happens to me while I'm, or if I cause damage to somebody while I'm working for you, do you have insurance coverage to protect me? As far as you guys go on work placements, the university does provide workplace insurance coverage for you if you're injured on the job. So, let me just do this. So that's liability insurance. I'm going to skip that. So travel insurance, it's a must for all travelers. There's many different types of policy forms and many providers. When it comes to providers, CUSIS medical insurance provides out-of-country medical, and it has some extensions that are similar to a travel policy. It covers cancellation insurance. It does cover some lost baggage and that kind of stuff. If you want more information about it, go to the CUSA website and look for their medical coverage link. And in there, we'll talk about out-of-country coverage and examine it. You might be able to get away with just using CUSA's coverage. If you want to use CUSA's coverage, you've got to go in and notify them that you're traveling and for the length of time. That's one of the stipulations their policy says. The GSA has a similar policy. It's not quite as good as CUSA's, but again, they cover out-of-country medical. If that doesn't work for you, you can buy insurance when you purchase your airplane ticket to where you're traveling. Typically on the website when you're going to purchase your airline ticket, there's always an add-on at the bottom of it that says, do you want to buy travel insurance? One little tip about travel insurance is it's one of those products in life that you get what you pay for. So if they're going to charge you like $50 for your 3 months, that's probably not a very good policy. They generally should run, you know, if you're going for 3 months, you're probably going to be looking at $200 to $300 for your time away. Other places you can look for insurance is through banks. Typically, most banks have travel insurance. Travel agencies sell travel insurance, and then you can actually walk into insurance brokers' offices and they sell travel insurance. But I can't emphasize enough that you really want to buy the best policy you can, because the lower price policies, there's always gaps in coverage. Some of the things that travel insurance cover, of course, is emergency medical and dental, evacuation. So if you're sick and you have to come home because of your illness or your injury, they'll pay to get you home. Lost luggage, lost documents, cancellation of your flight, legal costs. So if you were to get arrested for some instance, some travel insurance will actually reimburse your legal expenses up to a certain dollar value. Additional costs for travel. So I talked about you maybe being laid over in a city because one of your flights got canceled. Travel insurance, good travel insurance policies actually will reimburse you for your expenses while you have to stay over in a country. So it could be a hotel, it could be clothes you had to buy because they lost your luggage, or it could be just transportation and meals. Okay. Actually, they'll pay to transport your body home in case something happens to you. So, and that can be quite expensive. Terrible thing to talk about, but it does happen. So some of the things you need to talk about or look at is, again, exclusions. What's not covered by the policy? One of the ones that we run into all the time is athletic activities. So in past, I've heard where somebody got injured playing volleyball on the beach, broke their ankle, and the insurer denied the claim because they were participating in an athletic activity. Typically what I would say is that's out of the ordinary. Where you might run into problems is if, let's say on the weekend, you decided to go rock climbing or hiking up in a mountain, which would be deemed a high-risk event. You should call your travel insurer to make sure that they will cover you if something happens on that type of activity. Skydiving generally is something they will not cover. Deductibles, always be aware of your planned deductibles. It's okay if you have a $50 deductible, which means I have to pay the first $50, so that could be drugs or something. But if I have a $5,000 deductible, that's not doing me any good if I'm traveling abroad and I'm supposed to come up with $5 to pay a hospital or something. So always keep an eye on what the deductible is. We talked about repatriation, evacuation. That's bringing you back in the case of injury. Pre-existing health conditions is another thing you need to be aware of. If you, let's say, have diabetes or something and you have a medical emergency arising out of that pre-existing condition, sometimes the insurer won't cover you. So you need to be aware of that. I think there was a news story just earlier in the fall where a person who was 8.5 months pregnant decided to go on vacation to Hawaii and had the baby in Hawaii, and they were upset that the insurer didn't pay for the birth. Well, that's where it came in. It was a pre-existing condition, and they wouldn't cover for the cost of the birth while they were away. One of the other things you want to be aware of in travel insurance is look for that term coordinate benefits or coordination of benefits. Some insurers will want you to pay up front and then submit your invoices and then they'll reimburse you. And the other side of it is if you have provincial health insurance, your provincial health insurance technically covers you while you travel. Problem is they won't pay up front. They want you to pay and again get reimbursed. So when you see a policy that says they coordinate benefits, a couple things. One, they'll pay the bill for you, right to the hospital or the doctor. And then if there's any recovery, i.e. can they go against OHIP to recover some of the money they paid, they'll do that on their own, okay? I think the exercise that you did just before I started was really great because it really demonstrated a lot of things that you need to be concerned about when you travel. But it also, I think you guys came up with some really great plans on how you deal with those things, right? And really what the whole message of my message today is that yes, there are things you need to be concerned about, but knowing the risk is 90% of the battle. Knowing the risk and then having a plan on how you deal with it is 99% of the battle. But you always have to understand it's really your own responsibility. There's not much we can do here from Carleton and Ottawa when you're 3, 4, or 5,000 miles away. So you need to understand that you do have that responsibility on it. You need to develop your own personal risk management plan, taking what you learned today from that exercise and sit down and take the time to think of, here's the things that could go wrong on my trip. How am I going to deal with them if something does happen? So the last thing I want to talk to you about is this service that the university's bought to help you prepare for when you travel and support you while you're away. And it's called International SOS. And I think everybody got the card and a little brochure on this. And so I'm just going to highlight of some of the services that they can provide to you and some of the things you need to do to access those services. So this, if you check your card, you'll see this membership number. Everybody has that membership number. That's sort of our policy number when it comes to International SOS. To register on the website, use your Carleton email address and that membership number, and that'll get you registered on the app and on the website. So good to remember that. What does it provide? It provides 24/7, 365 access to doctors, nurses, security experts, and emotional support. So basically, you can call their 1-800 line anytime, any day, and they'll put you through to doctors, nurses. If it's a health problem, if you're worried about your security, they have security experts, and you can actually phone them and speak to counselors, and they can give you emotional support if you're homesick or you have some mental health issues. They actually have multilingual support, 99 different languages. They have a really excellent website. We'll talk about that in a minute. You can get access to email alerts, so if something is going on in the area of the country or the city you're in, you can actually get access, and they'll push out notices to let you know what's going on. So when we tested this service, we had students in Paris during the Paris shooting attacks, and they were actually getting notices about things like, don't go down this street because the police have blocked it off. This is the area of the city you don't want to go to. These are the buses that you can run and you can take, and all that kind of stuff. So it gives you really detailed information in the event something happens. They give you customized trip assessments. So I talked about doing your own personal risk assessment for your own trip. They can help you. They'll give you some detailed information. I'll show you that form in a minute. And they have a network of medical, dental, security providers, over 80,000 worldwide. So they have clinics, doctors, security professionals to help you in the case of a situation. This is not just for the big situations. This is for something as simple as, I've got a rash and I don't know if I should go to the doctor or not. You can actually phone International SOS. They'll have a doctor on the other line. They actually will ask you to send a picture to them. They'll make the assessment and they'll tell you, yes, you need to go to a doctor, and we recommend you go to this clinic because they're an expert in this area. So they can give you really good support and direction. Or they can say, it's just a rash, keep it clean and it'll go away in a day. So this is their website. I don't know how well you can see this, but they've got, if you go down here, Travel Security Online, they'll give you global risk ratings and the headlines. You can click what you want. It gives you all kinds of information. Up here, you can actually put a location in. It'll give you a full breakdown of the country you're going to. I'm just trying to think of it. All kinds of different information you can go and get from them. Go on the website, play around before you go, and you can see what kind of information it can give you. It's really an excellent website to support you before you go. The app is a really good app, and it really supports you while you're there. One touch dial assistance. So when you download the app, you'll see this blue button with the phone on it. All you have to do is press that, and that will put you through to the closest center, and they'll be able to help you with your situation. You can check in. So up here in the upper right-hand corner, there's a button that says check in. We really would like to see you check in on a regular basis. What that does is just send a notice back to us to say, here's where you are. It doesn't track you 24/7. It's not like Big Brother's looking down upon you, but especially if something happens, let's say you were in Greece and there was an earthquake. If you check in, then we can say, okay, she's all right, and we know where you are. We can reach out to you and say, here's what we're going to do for you, or here's what SOS is going to do. So really would like you to check in when you arrive in your destination and periodically as your stay goes on, but in particular if something of a serious nature happens. And basically you need to create your profile on the app when you download it, because it asks you for details, and that allows for a lot of information to be pointed to you. The other thing we really would like you to do is register for what's called My Trips, and you've got these, Sarah, and I just found this out this morning. This is why this didn't work. There's actually a different link that you have to use to download My Trips, and you can actually go on there and put your itinerary in. And the minute you put your itinerary in, it will send you a personalized risk assessment report of the country you're going to. It will send you things like, is there any diseases? Is there any areas of violence? Any medical concerns? Just a million things that you can go in. It's generally a 3 to 4 page report, and it talks about everything about the country. It's really good. Again, under this section, you either use your Carleton email address to register, or if you use Another email address, you've got to make sure that this email address aligns with the email address you're registered in. So if you're going to use, we prefer you to use the Carl email address in both cases so that they align and the process will go. So this is what they send you, this pre-travel advisory. Talked about medical care in the country, it's good. Food and water, it's unsafe, you can't drink the water. Vaccinations, what vaccinations you need. Disease risk, it's medium, talk about what diseases there could be there. Malaria, there's rabies. Personal safety, generally safe. Unrest and conflict, terrorism, transport, hazard, that kind of stuff. So if I can just step back a bit, one of the things you can actually get them to do is let's say you arrive at the airport and your ride from the employer isn't there and you don't know where to go or whatever, you can actually phone them. They'll tell you whether it's safe to take a taxi or Uber, or they may even arrange for a ride for you with the company and tell you how to get to where you need to go. So they're there to assist you in any way possible. And so that's why we purchased this service for you. But again, this is your pre-travel advisory. And so this is, so when you go into that link that I told you, this is sort of the questionnaire. They want you to give them a little bit of detail because they actually do personalize that risk report to you. So some of the things you'll be doing, where you're staying. You may say you're staying at this hotel. They'll send you back and say, we suggest you don't stay at that hotel. It's unsafe. There's one a block over that's safer. You should go there. Those type of things. So they can provide you all kinds of really detailed information. And the last thing, really, we're going to download this to the financial services website, the ISSO website, and to your website. It's a travel risk awareness course. They're about, it takes about 20 minutes. There's different, modules is what I'd use to talk all kinds of different issues around travel. And we really encourage you to take the time, do 20 minutes and review this travel course, provide you with some really good information. So, and as this message says, we wish you a very safe journey. I hope you enjoy your experience. Is there any questions? A lot of information there, really exciting stuff, I know, but.
We'll jump into on the International SOS quickly because you've probably heard it since the moment you stepped in until now. And it's because this is a service that as an independent traveler you would never have. It's because Carlton put a lot of money behind this and it's a really huge resource and asset for you guys. And we talk a lot about phoning, but you can even text these questions.
Yep.
And it's not the equivalent of like 911 where you only use it in an emergency. By reaching out and talking to them on a regular basis, or whenever you have a question about your own safety before you engage in an activity, you're better preparing yourself and making more informed decisions. So please use this service for anything you might use. The university spent the money for you guys to have this service. So that's why we are going to make you show it to us before you have lunch.
Yeah, I guess, again, I just emphasize is that, we don't have very long arms. I mean, I think I can't even reach you guys, right? So when you're abroad, sure, we want to help you. These guys have the tools to help you. They actually do have boots on the ground, and in the more severe cases, they can actually send a body to help you and assist you in the case. So, yes.
Does it use internet, or does it connect to your cell phone number?
It goes both, right? So it works off data, and then it will work off the internet. So. And so I know that's always an issue. Am I going to take my own phone with me, or am I going to just get a phone when I'm over there? Again, you can download it here, but if you're going to buy a phone over there, it could be a cheaper plan or something. Make sure you download it. It recognizes international phone numbers and everything as well. So, yes?
Are you able to download it on a laptop or anything like that? Like, I'm bringing a flip phone too.
I know you can get to the website. Download the website and sign on through the internet to that. Can you send Sarah a quick message and I'll get back to you? I'm pretty sure you can. I know, I'm trying to think. I've never used it that way. That's why I'm not sure.
You should still be able to phone, like
Yeah.
the number off the website. You should still be able to phone.
Phone, yeah.
Identify just that membership ID number.
See, I know with my laptop, I actually have apps, and I'm able to download the actual app. So when it comes up on my laptop, it actually looks like the image from the phone. So I assume in most laptops you can do that. Anything else? Well, again, I really hope you enjoy your experience. Prepare yourselves, do a risk management plan, buy proper travel insurance, and I know you'll all have a wonderful experience. Have a great lunch. And